Trump has not prepared the American people for military action in Iran.
President Obama warned Syria that it should not cross the red line of using weapons of mass destruction against its own people, and then it gassed 1,400 of them, and he did nothing. And that set the tone for American sort of lack of credibility. Welcome to Political Perspectives. I'm Hugo Gurdon, Editor-in-Chief of the Washington Examiner. If you're joining us on YouTube, please remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Join the 250,000 others who are watching the Washington Examiner on YouTube. I am joined today, as I usually am, by Byron York, Chief Political Correspondent of the Washington Examiner. And Byron, let's talk about the fact that the United States seems very much closer to the possibility of military conflict now than it did just a couple of days ago. There's an enormous amount of action all around Iran in terms of ships and planes, refueling planes, fighter aircraft, etc., being moved into position. Tell us a little bit about that, and also, if you would, just how you see this as, is this principally designed to put pressure on Iran to come to a diplomatic deal, or is this actually, are we actually more likely to find ourselves in conflict in the next several days?
Well, certainly if the latter were to happen, the United States has moved a really big military armada to the area, bigger than the one used to take out Maduro in Venezuela. So the Iranians know that there is an enormous military force out there, and they know it's commanded by Donald Trump, who took out Soleimani, hugely important Iranian official in the first term, and who also took out the Iranian nuclear program in this term, and also took out Nicolas Maduro. So President Trump has a certain amount of credibility, I would think, with the Iranian leaders. When he assembles a big military force outside your country, you might want to listen to what he says. Now, the U.S. demands, they're having these talks, kind of indirect talks in Oman. But the U.S. demands are basically that Iran do three things: that it stop making nuclear weapons or trying to make nuclear weapons, that it stop killing its own people, and that it stop financing and supporting regional terrorist militias. They're having talks, and the Iranians have actually said something kind of slightly hopeful about them. But it seems unlikely this is really going to go anywhere. I think the Iranians would like to press for time a little bit so they can figure out what to do. But it seems really unlikely that the United States could reach a really satisfactory arrangement with Iran.
Right. The current situation, which is a stalemate and negotiations, in some ways is the safest or best that President Trump can have, or it might be, as it has been described, a sort of sweet spot, because this stalemate ends with one of two outcomes. One is that there is some kind of a deal, and the other is military conflict. And of course, military conflict is the dangers of that are very well known. But there's a danger with a deal too. Now, I don't want to suggest that President Trump would fall for the kind of deal that President Obama did, where essentially that money was sent, there were promises, empty promises made by Iran, and the money was used to finance terrorism for the next decade. But it's very difficult to trust Iran to keep its word on anything, and there must be a danger, the administration must be aware of the danger that, sure, they might be able to get something which meets those three or comes close to those three or suggests the possibility of those three things being met, but knowing that actually there's a pretty strong chance that the Ayatollahs will be lying, because that's what they do.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I don't think there's a chance of Trump falling for an Obama-style deal, but he might fall for some other deal, or basically really want to have a deal in which is so vaguely worded and defined that it doesn't really work into anything. My bigger worry right now is Trump has a history of actually using the military forces that he prepares for action.
Right.
That gives him a lot of credibility on the world stage. But it is a fact that Trump has not prepared the American people for military action in Iran. He has not gone on television in prime time. He has not explained to them why this is necessary. And he hasn't explained to me why this is necessary. I'm not really convinced at all that this is necessary. So before the president actually did anything significant militarily, he can't rely on surrogates or advocates and allies to explain all this in the press. He has to do it himself. He needs to tell the American people in his own words why he has ordered this or that military action.
Yeah, I want to come back to that in a moment, but I do want to pick up first on you mentioned the issue of American credibility. President Trump has an enormous amount of credibility when he threatens military action because he's used it before. But what happens to American credibility, or he must also be thinking, what will happen to American credibility if he has warned, as he's warned the Ayatollahs that they must not cross the red line of murdering the protesters, and yet they've killed 35,000 or more protesters. President Obama warned Syria that it should not cross the red line of using weapons of mass destruction against its own people, and then it gassed 1,400 of them, and he did nothing. And that set the tone for American sort of lack of credibility internationally. The administration and President Trump does not want to be thought of as weak in the way that President Obama and President Biden seem to be. And he told the Iranians, help is on the way. What happens to international credibility in America's sort of strategic position in the world if he does that, as he has done, and then does nothing about it?
Well, I think that the credibility that I just talked about with his previous attacks in Iran, Venezuela, and elsewhere, I think it would be damaged if he draws a red line, which he did, and then he just kind of lets it go.
Right.
Because when you draw a red line, you have to be prepared to act if
Right.
your adversary crosses the red line. So I don't think that is Trump's intention, but that would certainly damage U.S. credibility if he didn't really get some serious agreement out of this.
Yeah. So our own reporter, Rob Crilly, has just reported today that Senator Lindsey Graham played golf with the president and basically told him, look, you have a generational chance to remove the enemy of 50 years that Iran has been, remove the regime that has called for death to America over all of this time. President Trump likes to go big. How susceptible do you think that he is to that kind of argument when he ran for office as someone who did not want to was skeptical about regime change wars?
Yeah, he was skeptical, and he should remain skeptical. And he should remain skeptical about the arguments that you just summarized from Senator Graham, who, by the way, made some of the same arguments about the Iraq War. I think this was the round of golf in Florida with Nick Saban and Ron DeSantis. So maybe Coach Saban told the president to be, careful about this, be cautious, and don't listen to everything Lindsey says. So I don't know, but clearly in the run-up to the Iraq War, everybody who was alive and active at that time remembers all sorts of promises about how it would be a pretty easy affair, and it was not. And I think you should always approach military action with that caution in mind.
Yeah. So obviously, the cakewalk that it was described at in Iraq, it seemed like that perhaps for the first 3 weeks, at the end of which Saddam Hussein was toppled, after which there were years of continued involvement with American troops being killed in far greater numbers after Saddam was toppled than before. Presumably there would be a difference here, but one still, as you say, has to look for the worst case scenario. There's never been a suggestion, so far as I can know, that there would be American forces on the ground. All options are left open, but there's a big difference too with Iraq, or between Iran and Iraq, to the extent that when the Iraq War was waged, there wasn't a popular uprising. There may have been some kind of yearning in Iraq for the overthrow of the regime, but there wasn't an uprising. It couldn't be said that American forces were going in somehow to help what was already taking place. That would be a difference, wouldn't it, in the case of Iran, where clearly there's a popular uprising and a yearning to get rid of the Ayatollahs.
Yeah, and obviously in Iraq, the stated reason for going in was to remove weapons of mass destruction that the Bush administration incorrectly believed were actually in Iraq, but did not find afterwards. So yeah, they were not going in on the side of a popular rebellion, as we've seen in Iran in recent days. Now, it's not the United States' actual practice to go to invade countries or to take military action in countries on behalf of every popular rebellion that comes up.
Right.
So I'm not that doesn't, I think, clinch the case
No.
for doing this in Iran. But you're right; it is different in some of the fundamental facts from the Iraqi story.
So let's get back to the president's lack of preparation of the public, and indeed, presumably, lack of preparation also of the people's representatives up on Capitol Hill. How do you see, I mean, if there were military action in the next several days, is there going to be a very negative reaction up on Capitol Hill because they will feel that the preparation has not been done? And to what extent do you see Trump losing the base that he won, saying that he was skeptical about regime change wars?
All depends on the nature and speed of the military action. A quick one and done is something Trump likes those. They're very effective, and they don't create a lot of turbulence in their wake. Taking out Soleimani, we were told that there would be repercussions for a very, very long time. There weren't very many. And the Venezuelan thing, we are going to be involved in Venezuela for quite a long time, but it doesn't seem to be at a very high level at this moment. So that was another sort of quick thing. And obviously the Iranian nuclear bombing, the bombing of the nuclear facilities, another really quick one and done, very, very decisive. That's what Trump likes. So is that the kind of operation he is contemplating here and can pull off here? If that's the case, then it won't be that big a problem either with the public or with Capitol Hill. What you just worry about is we've gotten bogged down in the past, and you worry about it in the future.
Okay, so Byron, that's where we're going to leave it with those words of wisdom. I'm sure that's true. It really depends on the nature of any military action that gets taken. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you all for joining us on Political Perspectives. Make sure to come back to us next week, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll look forward to seeing you again.